atau sang Raja Langit yang telah berdiri dan menjadi duri dalam perebutan gelar sang Raja Galaksi. Lalu, siapa yang akan mendapatkannya dan melaju ke MSC 2024 untuk membawa nama MPL Indonesia di panggung dunia? Marilah kita menjadi saksi atas sengitnya perebutan gelar juara dan tiket ke MSC 2024 di babak playoff MPL Indonesia Season 13. We own this!
Ya bisa dibilang Geek Fam itu kutukan kita lah, kutukan King Slayer juga kan. Tapi menurut gua sih itu gua bisa handle itulah.
Geek, mereka benar-benar menjadi The King Slayer. Belum terpatahkan juga secara histori sekarang.
Kalau dibilang King Slayer, bisa dibilang iya. Cuman kalau ekspektasi menurut aku di season playoffs ini, jangan terlalu berharap lah. Soalnya kan mereka jago juga, terus pressure di playoffs tinggi. Kalau kita menang, baru kita bisa dibilang King Slayer.
Setelah berseason-season, satu tim yang tak bisa mengalahkan Geek Fam hanya RRQ.
Ya lu bisa dibilang Geek Fam itu kutukan kita lah, kutukan King Slayer juga kan. Tapi menurut gua sih itu gua bisa handle itulah.
Mungkin jalannya guys, kalian harus bisa kontrol emosi, kalian harus bisa menerima, kalian harus bisa lebih dewasa lagi melihat jalan pertandingan, jalan kehidupan ya. Jadi pribadi baik-baik.
Gua nggak tahu sejarahnya dari season 11 gimana pas lawan Geek Fam ya. Yang pasti gua pasti bakal ngasih yang terbaik lah di playoff.
Untuk di playoff nanti pas lawan RRQ ya kita bakal ngelanjutin title itu sih. Soalnya kita mau lanjutin perjalanan kita ke MSC lah.
Buat Skylar, gua tahu lu sharp, tapi kita sharp juga, jadi kita kasih yang terbaik ya. Lihat aja nanti.
Pesan buat Baloy, mending ke jungler gua aja sih, jangan ke lane gua. Gua pengen one-on-one aja sedikit.
We started the season with 9 teams, and 72 matches later, we are left with only 6. And the day has finally come, ladies and gentlemen, the day of reckoning that we have to send 2 more home. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the playoffs of MPL ID Season 13 live in Velodrome, Jakarta, Indonesia. You guys are now watching the English broadcast here with me, Eterna, alongside with Mirko, as well as 13 Arashi. Live in Velodrome, Jakarta, in momentous matches ahead of us. We're 2 teams we have to send home. But before we begin, we do want to thank our sponsors. MPL ID Season 13 is powered by Moonton, presented to you by the official tournament smartphone Samsung Galaxy. We have our official government partner PBESI, our official e-wallet GoPay, our official destination gaming and esport Kadia. We also have our official gold partner UBS Gold. We also want to thank our partners in esports. We got Dunya Games, GamesMax, Oraimo, Campina, Telkomsel, as well as our suppliers Innomart, Point Coffee, Neo QLED, Supersmart TV Plus, as well as Saturdays. Thank you so much to all the sponsors and all the aforementioned for making this tournament happen. Because once again, we are now in the playoffs. Mirko, we'll start with you. How are you feeling coming into this?
Well, you know, it feels like every single season, every single playoffs, I have the same answer. It's always great being here, but for some reason, it just feels different. There's a different aura about this season's playoffs, especially after a record-breaking regular season. It was so close up until the very end. Heck, we didn't even know if RQ would even make it in the final day.
I mean, it's funny you say that there's a different aura, you know, considering the situation. But for me personally, today, There's a lot at stake right here, especially if you're a fan of one of these teams, right? The first day, nobody wants to be in the loser seat, especially on that first day. It hits just that much harder than usual.
So the Kings are waving their flag, their white flag once more, but this time no one comes to answer the call as we get to match number 1 between the King Slayers themselves, Geek going head-to-head against the Kings of Kings, RRQ. Meanwhile, in match number 2 of the day, we do have a new team. Who's this? TLID?
TLID, that's Liquid Aura for everybody who doesn't know maybe of the changes that were made in the break. The 2-week break between the regular season and the playoffs. We have Liquid Aura now stepping in, taking over Aura, the team we once know as just the Indonesian Dragons. Now they're the Cavalry.
The Cavalry here trying to go up against EVOS, a powerhouse in its own right. We'll have to wait though. In the beginning, this matchup is where everyone's attention is at for now because, you know, there's a bit of rivalry between these two teams and there's a bit of history if you look at the development of the regular season.
Definitely. And if we, circle back to match number 1, do you guys remember the final day of the regular season?
Oh, yeah.
The only reason that RQ were able to climb their way into the playoffs was because Geek were able to win against Rebellion. And again, the Geeks, they're once again the gatekeepers of the RRQ success. So the question is, will they remain the King Saviors or will they turn into the King Slaves today?
I mean, you have to think about it, right? For RRQ, it's a bit of a lose-lose here. Because even if they win, everyone's going to be like, bro, really? That's how you repay them, right? For doing
the
so well. And
Martabucks?
for the Martabucks, exactly, man. So, it's a bit of a lose-lose, but it is the way it is. So, I'm hoping for an exciting match. After 2 weeks of a long break, I feel like there's going to be a lot of very interesting strategies and drafts we can expect to see today.
When we're talking about interesting, I'm wondering who will we be seeing from RRQ's lineup later on, but we do have to circle around this. Ladies and gentlemen, ever since MPL ID Season 11, RRQ have not won a single match up to this point.
Even when it looked like they were about to win just last season in the playoffs, Arashi, I don't think you want to remember this.
Oh, man.
But it was a reverse sweep that Geek Fam were able to pull off. 2 games, the first 2 games they lost against RRQ, and that was with Chidera. Out of nowhere, they subbed in Marquee, and they found the solution. They subbed in the solution to find a solution. What's going on? Why is it 7-0?
You have to wonder if there's kind of a mental situation or if it's just like a bit of luck involved right here. But the fact is, the stats really show that Geek Fam has some kind of hold over RRQ. And considering the way both teams have been performing this season in particular, I think the odds are that Geek Fam are the ones that will come out on top, especially with the versatile roamer here, Beloyski.
I have a fun fact here, actually. Before Beloyski came, Geek very seldomly won a match against RRQ, but since this man stepped in, it's been a win streak, and this is why.
He's just so versatile when it comes to the kinds of roamers that he can bring. Of course, a lot of the other roamers, they have a wide hero pool. But when it comes to the sheer diversity of playstyles, assassins, mages, initiators, counter-engagers, and utility heroes, Beloyski just seems to have everything in the bag. And I really feel like it's not exactly, he's just his mechanical skills on these heroes. It's the big brain Beloyski, man. He knows how to get the best out of that hero in the most weird of situations.
He's, I think, also the only roamer that we let commit crimes. Right? He pulls off the Saber roam and then he plays the Helker roam as well. It became a meme in Indonesia as he performs well on the Helker roam, but apparently everybody else doesn't, especially in our ranked games here. You are not Beloy. That's the meme that we usually hear. Wake up. RQ. Now the big question is, what's going to happen? Are they going to be able to adapt to a team that they haven't been able to beat for, 2 seasons in a row right now? And it so happens to be in the playoffs. They're up against their natural counters.
And 2 weeks isn't a long time.
No.
In the grand scheme of things, 14 days was all the amount of time that they had to try and figure out how to finally win a game or a match against Geek. And to be honest, coming into a best of 5, ladies and gentlemen, by the way, in the playoffs, it's no longer a best of 3, it's a best of 5 now. That luck factor, it's slimming. It's slipping away. And the question is, do they have what it takes? I think everyone despite them rooting the Kingdom right now, everyone is doubting whether or not RRQ can take this match.
And who can blame them, right, with how they've been performing? And there's also questions about who's going to play.
Exactly.
Right, because we've seen them do so many changes in the regular season. Now you're really curious, what kind of final strategy, the final roster will be used to try and go up against Geek Fam? Because you have to keep in mind, usually the idea is that the longer the game goes, or best of 5, best of 7, Geek Fam, the longer it goes, they just seem to get better and better. That is another like factor that RRQ definitely have to think about when they're strategizing for this match.
Well, you know, one thing that Geek Fam need to strategize against is the crowd. Because RRQ, we all know how passionate, how amazing their fans are, and the Kingdom are here in the Jakarta International Velodrome full force. You can probably hear them from Arashi's side. We're actually sitting in the Kingdom side, and man, as the match goes deeper, we're going to get these people screaming even louder and louder. And for sure, that's always been the problem for Chidera. Chidera in playoffs. It's always different for some reason. I don't know if it's the stage, a different atmosphere. I don't know.
You think it's stage fright? Up until this point?
Extra pressure? I mean, he was relatively new and he has been very impressive. And if it is a mental aspect, I feel like at this point, with how long he has been playing, he must have kind of made a breakthrough.
It's been quite some time, but the one thing that we do have to admit, Chidera is an emotional player.
Yeah.
When he does well, we can see him rolling with tears on the stage. When he doesn't perform, the same can be said. So there definitely can be. I'm getting distracted, ladies and gentlemen. It's a shame if you guys don't make your way to Velodrome right now to see how united the Kingdom is over there on the stage. It's amazing to see that amount of support coming despite everything that went down in the regular season. But circling back to RRQ, now
there you go.
A lot of there. Finally, you get to see it.
Ooh.
That's a how many meters is that?
It's a long stretch,
It's
man.
a long stretch.
And it just, yeah, they're so coordinated. And it seems like more people are coming in as we speak right now into the Jakarta International Velodrome. So if you guys are in Indonesia, you have those tickets, come by. And even if you don't, there's
Come
a
by still.
land of fun outside for free that you guys can go and enjoy, merchandise, all that.
Yeah.
More fun with Arashi there.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe. And you have to give credit as well, though, to the stage, right? It's just a bicycle like stadium circuit,
this is a cycling
and they
track.
found a way to repurpose it, and it looks very, very nice.
It does.
It'll look better at night, trust me, all right?
Oh,
When you
yeah.
guys see it later on for our second match, when it actually starts at night, evening, almost, you're going to see prime stage MPL ID playoffs.
But that comes later. So let's center back to game number 1 or match number 1. A lot of people are saying that RRQ should fall back to their identity, their core identity that we saw earlier on in the season, which is to focus on Skylar. But another person can argue that it's too one-dimensional. So what is your opinion on it? Let's start with you, Mirko.
Well, honestly, looking at RRQ, right, the main factor of their success in the regular season has been Skylar. It just seems like, even in the regular season, when we say they're Skylar Esports, it makes sense because Skylar can carry them. But up against a team like this, they need to add some versatility into their lineup. Irad is one person that they can rely on to go for those carries later on.
Wait, hang on. That's Clay in the mid lane. So this is the lineup that you're questioning, Arashi.
Yeah, Clay coming into the mid lane, despite some concerns, some doubts, he will be performing today. We'll have to see how he does.
Ladies and gentlemen, for our first match of the day, a knockout, an elimination match will be played. It's the Kingslayers who find themselves against a very familiar foe. Will they be the saviors once again of the Kings, letting them pass the first round? Or will they prevail after helping them up to playoff? Will they stop them back to the ground, to the depths of elimination? Welcome, Geek Fam and RRQ Hoshi!
These two teams have enough stories between them to fill an entire novel. Imagine the team that saved you, that gave you the opportunity to make it to the playoffs are now the ones to push you down. In leg number 1, it was 2-1 for Geek. In leg number 2, it was 2-0 Geek. But playoffs are a different ball game. So can we expect a different outcome?
Still same roster though from RRQ, and even still Zaya alone up against Bluffsy and Mura. This is another 2v1 situation that Zaya finds himself in. You're the kingdom here, Arashi. What are your thoughts on this? Zaya still coaching, it seems, alone on stage.
I feel like it's a bit unfortunate, especially considering how important it seems like the coaching, the drafting has been in Season 13. I feel like he really needs some backup. We already said on the desk our concerns with Coach Zaya, looking exhausted, looking pressured, but he has a lot of responsibility, and so far he has been able to deliver improvements, deliver winning drafts in the drafting phase. So for the Kingdom, they have to go and put their trust in Coach Zaya all the way.
But to be honest, during the break on social media, it feels like that pressure, it's there, but we've seen a better emotion for Zaya. I mean, he's smiling with the players, so maybe the situation has changed. Maybe something in the management has changed. But let's hope he brings that positivity into this, because, I mean, we remember the final moments of the regular season. He was not looking okay at all.
I think all the way from the regular season, whenever we tried to strike a conversation with him, it just always looked like he was out of it, right?
Yeah.
He's like, all right, bro, cool conversation, but we need to make it a play. I need to find a way somehow. And he always looks so stressed. I'm glad to see that he's finally finding comfort here in Indonesia for RRQ as well, because seriously, in the playoffs, I think that might be what you need. You need to play through your comforts. You need to play through your strong points. If it's still Skylar Esports, if it's still Skylar-centric, should they play towards that?
I feel like, in a way, right, using Skylar as the main weapon is not like a bad situation, but I think they need a bit more flexibility, right? Being a bit two-dimensional, especially against a team like Geekfam so far, that can be very, very dangerous. Looking at the most picked and banned heroes for both these teams, especially with the blue side win rate favoring for Geekfam, a lot of options they can explore right here, but the fighters in the jungle really seems to be the main thing that both teams really contest. Afterwards though, it is going to be the Nathan and the Claude. You have to wonder, with the current situation, the current meta that's so much more aggressive, do these teams want to go and secure a late game carry, or do they want to go all in and try and just get some kind of aggressive snowballing composition to try and get more guarantees, especially in that mid game?
That's actually a really good point that you brought up, right? Because I think the last league that we saw, I think you mentioned this, Miracle, was MPL PH, and you mentioned the teams that are able to bring and find their strength in the early to the mid game usually are the teams to take the game. Do you think will we be seeing the same kind of difference, the shift for Indonesia, or it's just a region diff?
That's the big question. Honestly, it relies on a lot of their discipline and their decision making in the game. When you play with an early game composition, you technically need to play perfect up until that mid game, up until that end point, right? You have a very, very small window of opportunity to make that work, and I think that's something that you can really look to Geekfam to pull off.
Speaking of pulling it off, the keys to victory by the Samsung Galaxy A55, A55 5G for Geekfam, strengthen the Beloy-Luke combo foundation. If one is an engager, the other one has to be a playmaker, and vice versa. They have to cover for each other's holes in their game, and usually that is what allows them to have such good balance in the drafting phase. And prepare Marky, the key, from the bench. Make sure that he has that solution effect that they are looking for in the playoff stage.
I mean, remember what he was able to offer last time around when he suddenly stepped in? I think a lot of people were like, what? A sub in the gold lane this late? I don't think it's going to work out, but they were like, no, it is. And it actually did. But going back to point number one, this is something that is unique to Geekfam, right? The fact that they're able to kind of shift the responsibility of initiating and covering between Luke and Beloyski, and that just layers that flexibility. But meanwhile, we're going to take a look at the keys to victory for RRQ.
You better do it right, that final one.
Well, strengthen the RRQ's triangle, the jungle, mid, and roam, especially with Clay in the mix. He needs to be able to be moving in better synergy with his team, making sure that he does not get out of position, and he complements the whole rotations. And of course, Skylar! I believe Professor KV is the one that requested. Put it in there. Full exclamation marks.
So can we conclude that all the casters agree, you know what? RRQ, just go back to your fundamentals. Focus on Skylar.
like the overarching strategy can go that way, but the way they go about it, right? If they can get a strong mid-triangle,
We can hear it too on the other
we
side.
can hear it from the Indonesians.
They had to give that specific key to victory to Ranger Amas, right? Like even KB couldn't do it justice. You gotta. He's looking at me. He's trying to tell me to do the same thing. No, I'm saving my voice.
Yeah. He has just next level stamina, Ranger Amas.
Okay, so agree, Skylar.
Agree.
Yes. But
Agree.
maybe.
What about you?
You know, Aka's point, agree.
All right. Well, most pick EXP lane heroes though in each region here. Seeing a bit of a difference, that Yuzong is very, very popular in Indonesia. And looking at how our region has been contesting for these fights, it seems to be one decisive moment whenever there's a Lord Dan situation. Whereas now, if you look at the other regions, especially NA and PH, it seems like mobility, an extra bit of playmaking, more independence, less team reliance seems to be something that they do like having in their arsenal.
Can you agree with the statement? There are two types of EXP laners now.
Ooh.
There is team fight and macro XP laners.
Yeah, I could agree
So
with that.
Benedetta, Paquito, they're macro XP laners. And we have team fight XP laners like the X-Borg, the Terizlas. Agree?
I think the small definition definitely, like, I mean, it's easier for you on the Paquito, on the Benedetta to clear those waves,
Yeah.
right? But I think it also comes down to how the player utilizes these picks, because someone like Fluffy, he's very rarely on the Paquito this season, very rarely on the Benedetta, but he does the same things you would do on a Paquito, on a Benedetta, cut the waves to stop those kind of XP laners from doing work. So he's actually doubling down on being a playmaker, initiating on the Terizla, but also cutting the waves and stopping that macro playstyle from happening from a Paquito or Benedetta.
Just to do it all, and
Yeah.
it's more like a micro, and it seems like the team fight situation is more micro heavy, whereas that macro game, even though you are on a team fight hero, finding opportunities to actually be able to rotate and then join in with your team to be able to initiate for them, that in itself is also still something that you have to do, even though you're on a, let's say less team fight oriented hero.
But if you were to compare, right? Because we saw the comparison in regions, right? MPL PH, they had the Benedetta. These are very macro heavy EXP laners. Meanwhile, from other regions, it seems like it's more team fight centric. What do you think is stronger?
Ooh.
If you had to
Interesting.
go head to head, who would win that game?
I feel like for teams right now, there are so many different ways to try and get a fight going. Like you don't really need, almost 5-man big ultimate. So I think the macro, the mobility that these more independent EXP laners bring allow you to actually pressure the 1v1, pressure the split push, quote unquote, and even then, in a team fight, a Paquito and a Benedetta can still absolutely have a lot of impact in those fights.
Do you agree?
I think so, but also we need to take a look at how these other, like, I mean, in MPL Philippines as well, right? How do they utilize these picks? The Benedetta, the Paquito, and sure, you get a lot of macro prowess. You are able to clear waves and then rotate really quick on the Paquito, on the Benedetta, but it's how they utilize it in these team fights as well that's super, super impressive. Instant shout out for me to Paquito has to be to Liquid Echo, actually. Sanford and Sanji. Why do I mention Sanji in this conversation? Is because, bro, Sanford's on the Paquito, but he was enabled by something like a Lo Yi in the mid lane. He was given these flanking potential angles with the diversion, and he went full damage. So the man was playing as an assassin on the Paquito, and on top of the macro power that you have with your mobility, you have even more with the teleports.
That's actually quite interesting. So we'll see how it actually pans down here in our region in Indonesia right now as we are moments away, ladies and gentlemen, of entering the drafting phase. Game number 1 in this best of 5 between Geek Fam and Rex Regum Kaon. We're gonna see, as it is presented to you by the official smartphone, Samsung Galaxy A55, A35 5G, and you're right, 3 bands from the side of Geek are given towards Skylar. The Natan, the Claude, as well as the Moskov have been taken out of the board, and that leaves the Harith, first pick in for Geek. RRQ, they're only left with the Roger, perhaps.
They haven't, quote-unquote, nerfed the Harith. The survivability base shielding from the second skill and the scaling of it has been lowered, but it's still an absolute powerhouse. Good at trading, good survivability, and a lot of outplay potential. Letting it go to Geek, bit of a bold move, but for RRQ, banning both the Lo Yi and the Chip I mean, the Loi is still good, and the chip now is a lot stronger. I thought RRQ, though, would be the one to try and use it. But we'll have to see. The first two picks here, Baxia and the Roger. A lot of flex potential denied there by the picks, but at the same time, this is a aggressive angle they're looking at.
Blue side, so far in the regular season, even in MPL Philippines, MPL Malaysia, from what we've seen, have had more success because you can dictate what picks you can start with, right? What gameplay you want to try out. Barats is a hero that we have seen kind of lose its popularity, lose its strength in this patch, but it seems Geek Fam still find it very, very good. We know the changes to the invades, we know the changes to his clear speed as well, and the Baxia has risen over the Barats, I would even say. Is it because they have a fair miss? Do they want to play with even more health bars? Or what's the idea here?
Well, I don't know what the analytical sense is, but this is definitely taking a really good hero away from Clay. In the last week of week number 9, Clay was able to perform really well on the Faramis. We've seen him on the Novaria, it didn't work too well. The Valentina, not so much, but on the Faramis, he was a powerhouse, and the same can be said for Geek. So they've denied a pick from Clay, but they've also given a boy a comfortable and one of his power heroes as well.
Hey, the Faramis from Aboy has been notorious for just being so good, so solid. With RRQ, generally going for a lot of these big team fights, and that's how usually you want to play when you do have a solid gold laner that can, be aggressive. Usually it's in the team fights where he can have space to actually do some damage. But now with the Faramis, with the Harith even, it seems like Geek is doubling down, and they are no strangers to the long team fights. So RRQ, they have more mobility and to a degree more skirmish potential right here, but they have to find ways to force Geek into the situation. So I think catch potential, crowd control needs to be secured here.
Crowd control is going to be very, very big for both these compositions because they're looking to go for these team fights early to mid. We were talking about how early to mid compositions might come through, but we were still expecting RRQ to play those hyper carries to farm up, wait for Skylar to be a threat, but it kind of feels like, and actually it doesn't feel like, it is what we're seeing right now. Geek are forcing RRQ to play their game. They're forcing them to play in the early to mid. We'll beat you out in the early, and we'll take over in the mid game, taking away that late game presence that we are used to knowing from RRQ, a team that likes to weather a storm, wait for their gold lane to stay put up until those power spikes hit. And with the X-Borg, RRQ are taking away some of those damage-dealing potential picks from Mr. Luke himself.
That's a power hero, by the way, taken away from him. I think he's found most of his success on the X-Borg, but Geek go ahead and ban out the Franco.
Interesting. For Geek, like we said, they do not want to get pulled onto individual fights. They want to have a proper 5v5. So, taking away these pick potentials, especially with Vin. We didn't see the best out of the Franco, but back then, Vin on the Franco was notorious. But with the X-Borg ban away though, I feel that was one of the big problems that they faced against Geek Fam RRQ when they had Luke just zoning Skylar away with that X-Borg. So that will no longer be a case, be a situation they have to try and deal with.
But another region is knocking here. We have some data from MPL Philippines. Harith has become a highly respected hero in the MPL PH Season 13 playoffs. He has a 100% pick and ban rate with 30 bans and 2 picks, boasting a 100% win rate. That's
Ridiculous.
broken.
This was pre-patch though, right? It was a bit different. I mean, the nerfs aren't like massive or anything, but still, it's a bit different. You are still very, very sustainable at the Hellcurt. Something we were talking about from Mr. Beloy, Mr. BBB. It seems like, whoa, huh? Also a Link coming through. It's a double assassin combination. Trying to shut Skylar down.
Wow. Against a Minotaur though, technically, right, on paper, the Minotaur can counter-engage really well, protect the gold laner really well, and with the Roger, by the way, getting quote-unquote buffed a bit, more defensive stats when he's going all in. This is a bit more of a risky approach from Geek Fam.
Has Ray picked up a Ling yet?
This season?
According to my notes,
No.
he hasn't.
I don't think I've seen it.
I don't think we've seen him play Ling in MPL even.
Oh!